The British government is continuing to declassify and make public some records it's been holding pretty close to the vest about UFO sightings during the 80s and 90s. There are a few surprises in these so-called X-Files. Take a look.
Files detailing hundreds of UFO sightings reported to Britain's Defense Ministry are now being released online.
The release of more than 4,000 pages of documents related to UFO sightings revealed no fewer than 800 alleged encounters over the last 20 years.
1996 was the bumper alien year. 609 sightings, up fivefold from the year before.
He spent the remainder of his
1996 was also the year the TV show X-Files was at its peak. That same year, Will Smith battled aliens in Independence Day. Coincidence?
We had the chance this evening to talk with one of the men who helped investigate some of these astonishing UFO reports. Nick Pope spoke to us a little earlier from London. Now, you were part of this effort to track UFO sightings, and I know 90% of the time it was due to factors like weather or an airplane or satellites. But give us some examples of the kind of reports that you were looking into that were unexplained.
Well, the cases that were most interesting to us at the Ministry of Defence were the sorts of cases where UFOs were seen by police officers or pilots, and indeed where they were tracked on radar. Now, a good example is a case from 1993 where I led the investigation, and a UFO flew directly over two Air Force bases in England, and a report on that went up to the Assistant Chief of the Air Staff, one of Britain's most senior military officers. I mean, here we had huge triangular-shaped craft just flying over large parts of the country with total impunity.
So what do you think it was?
Well, we don't know to this day, and the case file on this incident is one of the files that's been opened to the public, and there's a marvelous quote in it where my head of division briefs these senior military officers and says, in summary, there is some evidence to suggest that an unidentified object or objects flew over the United Kingdom on the night in question. And frankly, we didn't know what else to say. We'd eliminated all the conventional explanations, and we were left with a complete mystery.
One of Britain's most famous UFO sightings, called the Rendlesham Forest incident, was actually reported by an American Air Force commander who was stationed there. Explain to us what he reported.
Well, this was Britain's most compelling UFO case, and actually on the first night it was claimed that a UFO had actually landed, and some of the United States Air Force personnel who were based in England at these Air Force bases got close enough to touch this thing, to see strange markings on the side that they likened to Egyptian hieroglyphs. Our defense intelligence staff assessed radiation levels taken at the landing site as significantly higher than background, and that's a direct quote from the government's own assessment. Either this happened, as the witnesses claimed, and a UFO landed next to two of NATO's most important military bases at a time of huge international crisis, or all these American Air Force personnel were hallucinating or making it up.
And Nick, you didn't start off as a UFO researcher per se. In fact, you were a skeptic about all this. What was it that made you a believer?
Well, I was a career government man. I served for 21 years in the Ministry of Defence. I certainly had no belief or no interest in UFOs. But the more I looked at these files, I investigated the cases that happened on my tour of duty, and I began to think that while most of them could be easily explained, there were these small number, the 5% or so, where it did seem we had strong evidence that structured craft were performing speeds and maneuvers that we couldn't match. Did any of us think they were extraterrestrial? Well, you know, no, we weren't paid up believers in little green men, but we didn't have an explanation either, so we just thought that there were some interesting defense and national security issues here.
And that was Nick Pope again, a former employee of the Ministry of Defense in Great Britain.